All right. I think we have a good crew here, Tracy.
Yeah. All right, then let's get started. So, welcome again, everybody. Thank you for joining us for our Scratch and Practice session, Designing for Creative Learning, from prototypes to public service announcements with Scratch. So, today we have a small but mighty team facilitating and supporting the workshop. So, my name is Tracy Tang, Outreach and Engagement Manager. I'm one of the facilitators, and I'm joined by Jacy Edelman. And I'll let Jacy, do you want to speak quickly about yourself?
Hi,
Yeah.
everybody. I'm the Senior Manager of Creative Learning here at Scratch. It's so fabulous to see some friends from the past and some new friends here. And we have an awesome team from Scratch that are going to be supporting the session today. So we have Dr. Jarvis Bailey, Senior Manager of Programs, Operations, Kimberly Thomas Kane, an Outreach Manager, Outreach and Engagement Manager, and then Marin Vernon, our Learning Resource Designer. So you will see them in the chat. The chat will be fast and furious, so please keep making sure to share along as we head through the session.
Yeah. So before we start, all the great stuff, activity, we want to share an overview of Scratch as well, especially since some of you might be new to Scratch. So actually, Scratch started back in 2007 at the Lifelong Kindergarten Group at MIT Media Lab. So Scratch is like 17 years old now. So by many countries' law, almost an adult, but not yet. Next year. So we have grown so much that we have actually become our independent foundation, Scratch Foundation, back in 2019. So nowadays, we have more than 300,000 Scratch projects created by young people around the world every day on the community. And in the whole community, we have more than 120 million projects shared. So it's like amazing to see the scale it has grown into. But our mission has always stayed the same, like through all these years. So Scratch is always going to be free. And we want to support and provide young people with digital tools and opportunities to imagine, create, share, and learn. So that's going to stay the same as Scratch even continue to grow. All right. So today we have a lot in store for you. So now we're in the intro and warm-up session. And we are also going to talk a little bit about the Scratch and creative learning principles before we dive into the actual workshop and making, which is the design process, create, and then reflect and share. So we're going to do both unplugged and Scratch activity. And this is like a really condensed version of this workshop. So definitely consider spreading it over 2 or even more sessions when you adapt it for your learners. All right, so objectives for the workshop. First of all, we want you to be able to deepen your understanding and practice of the creative learning spiral and 4 Ps of creative learning, which we're going to talk about. And then be familiar with examples that actually can align CS, like computer science education, and subject matter content, like literacy, math, science, and so on. And then integrate reflection tools that support creative assessment strategies and also scaffold learning. And finally, you will just begin to brainstorm ideas on how you might want to adapt or develop a creative coding lesson for your own learners.
So we're going to kick off the session with a little bit of a creative learning, creative thinking warm-up, we like to say. So this is called See, Think, Wonder. And the premise of this warm-up activity is pretty simple. We're going to look at a picture on the next page. We're going to look at it for 1 minute. You're going to think about, what do you see? Just what's in front of you, like more literally, what do you see? And then what do you think? So what thoughts come up in your mind as you look at the picture? And then lastly, What do you wonder about what's happening in the picture, the context of the picture, or any questions that you have? So we're going to take 1 minute to look at this next picture, and we'd love for you to share in the chat as you're thinking about what you see, what you think, and what you wonder, any of the ideas that come up. So we'll let you soak it in just a little bit, and we're just starting off with, what do you see? So Scott sees swimmers. John asks, is it cold? So swimmers as a team, says Javier. A city, polar bear swimmers. Water. I see women swimming. Orange, yellow and orange caps. So a lot of these, what do I see? More literal. Fabulous. Clear skies. A cluster or gathering. People playing in the sea. Joanna sees people in kayaks on the side. Good eye. People in boats to assist, says Daryl. Water, a city. Fabulous. So we're going to ask the question, what do you think? So what thoughts come to your mind? The next step. What do you think might be happening? Kim says it seems like she thinks it could be cold. Scott thinks I might know where that is. Katie wonders, she thinks that this might be a club. Carolyn says, I think they're participating in some sort of challenge, preparing for a race, catch a cold. Awesome. And then thirdly, the last step of the warm-up is, we'd love to know, what do you wonder? What questions do you have about the picture or the things that you saw and the thoughts that you had? So Katie wonders how many swimmers there are. Kirsten wonders, where they're going. Javier wonders, what is the weather? Kim wonders, why did they get together? Chris wonders, different colored hats, why? So many questions. Is this a challenge? What time is happening? I wonder what animals are lurking in that water. Jessica, that would be my first thought if I were in that water. You wouldn't find me in there. Awesome. I wonder if there were fish in the water. Fabulous questions. Thanks, everybody. All right. So we're gonna give you a little context to the picture. So the picture that was taken was actually part of a organized swim in the Cambridge, the river that runs right through Cambridge, the Charles River in Massachusetts. And so we wanted to give you a little bit of context behind the picture. So many of the ideas that you thought about and that you wondered about were absolutely spot on. All of these questions really built around the actual context of the picture. So the Charles River in Cambridge and Boston, Massachusetts, has been highly polluted for probably over 50 years. No one would have ever dreamt of swimming in this river 25, even 15 years ago. But because of an initiative that was a collaboration between the city and local scientists and environmental groups, they actually worked on cleaning the river up, so much so that they were able to have an organized swim. And so now there are lots of races in the water. And as you can see in the quote, it's amazing to see how far rivers like the Charles and the Hudson River in New York City, in New York State have come. So just to give you a little bit of context to what you saw. And this, of course, will lead up to the activity that we'll be jumping into a little bit later once we get through some of our introductions.
I really enjoy reading all your See, Think, Wonder. So that definitely got my imagination going as well, because some of the things I did not wonder, but now I also wonder. So before we dive into the actual, making, creating, I also want to share a little bit of the Scratch creative learning guiding principles with you, because Scratch is, for us, just one of the many tools to support creative learning. So what's even more important is the guiding principles that we always follow along, because we design not only Scratch, the product, using these principles, but also our workshop, our learning experiences, and so on. So the first guiding principles is the 4 Ps of creative learning. So some of you might have heard about it, some of you might be new to it, but the 4 Ps basically refer to the 4 words that start with the letter P. So projects, passion, peers, and play. So we believe that learners would be engaging in creative learning and then also be more motivated to learn when they engage in all these 4 Ps. So for projects, if a learner can work on meaningful project, from brainstorming, creating prototypes, making iterations, then they will learn better. But not just any kind of projects. So ideally, the projects should be based on their passion. So their interests or things that are relevant and meaningful to them. Because when people work on projects that they care about, they would work longer and harder. And also they would be able to persist more in the face of challenges and learn more in the process. So that's passion. And in the learning process, peers are also very important, because learning is a social activity. So if you have peers that you can share ideas with, collaborate with, and get feedback on, and celebrate together your progress, the learning will flourish. And finally, we have play. And for play, it's not just like laughter and fun. That's important as well. But for us, play is more like a spirit, an attitude that involves playful experimentation. So you're willing to try new things, to take risks, just to play around and see what happens, and test things out and iterate and push the boundaries. So that's play for us. And finally, we have like a 5th P that we now often talk about as well. So purpose. So meaning that you design with intention, with purpose. And it could also mean that for learners, you want to make sure that they incorporate some sort of like purpose in their projects as well. So something maybe of collective interest, something that's meaningful for the whole community, and so on. So that's the 4 Ps. And then the second framework that we want to share is the creative learning spiral, which starts with imagine. So brainstorming, imagining ideas, and then create, bringing those imagination to life, and then play. So playing and tinkering with the creation and making changes based on what you see, and then sharing with your peers and others, and then finally reflect. So reflecting on the experience and learnings, which will lead to more ideas for imagine round 2 again. So basically it's a spiral that goes on and on. So the role of the creative learning facilitator is to help guide the process, like the spiral. And then it's also a reminder that we are all in this together, because we are also going through the spiral ourselves. So as learners go through the spiral again and again, they will become creative thinkers.
Awesome. So thank you, Tracy. We're going to jump into today's activity that we've designed for you. And we're going to invite you to create along during the session. So if you have the opportunity to actually, gather materials and then jump into Scratch, we'd really love for you to participate in a hands-on way. So in this next section, we're going to give you just an overview of what the activity includes, and then we'll jump into the actual imagine and create portion. So we wanted to start off by sharing that our learning designer, Marin, has created a set of coding cards that are specific to this activity. And they are awesome because they're student-facing coding cards that you can literally either print out or use as a PDF. And they really help students prompt, they help students with prompts and guiding principles and different pathways to design their projects. That can really help you as a facilitator keep things moving through the creative learning process. So we encourage you to open the cards now, and I see that Marin put them in the chat. And this will give you a little bit of a sneak peek into what we're going to be sharing and creating together today. And before we jump into the create process, we also wanted to give a little bit of context into how we chose the learning standards that we built the activity on for today's session. So for today's session, Tracy and I determined that we wanted to focus on the topic of water as a natural resource. So you might have gotten a hint of that from our See, Think, Wonder warm-up. So we're going to be focused on water. And because we really feel that it's important to offer an activity that gives you a real world example of how your learning objectives, your learning standards, or your learner competencies that you might be working towards, we understand that those are requirements that you need to fill as an educator or an administrator. So we really want to demonstrate how those learning and content standards can be supported with also the computer science standards or technology standards that you might be required to meet. But we don't want to ignore the creative learning guiding principles, the 4 Ps that Tracy just shared, the creative learning spiral that she just shared. Those can really be the foundation of the learning experience that you design for your students. So we want to share that this activity is a model of all of those standards and guiding principles in one. And we'll kick off by hearing from an educator with a really nice example of how her students have brought their personal interests into their Scratch projects.
So kids were working on a geology and rocks project in their science classroom, and they made a field trip to see like different rocks and learn about it in the field. And then they used Scratch to create a project, and they created very creative projects, like not only showing what they learned, but like putting very personal things into the stories they made, and like things that were not related to geology itself, but they were like connected to other interests from the students, which was very interesting to see. And the teachers were amazed, like how kids were able to express like their knowledge about the subject in ways that they wouldn't be able to see if they only written a paper about it.
So we want to highlight that this educator, what she just shared, really captures the essence of what our hope is for the session. So we want to provide opportunities for learners to bring in their unique passions and interest into their course of study. And of course, also make it as relevant as possible in terms of the context of what the learners are focused on. And so in that video, you saw mazes being shown, public service announcements. And as the educator explains, that type of, bringing their ideas and their passions to life, it wouldn't necessarily be the same if it wasn't on something like the Scratch platform that can really animate your ideas in different ways. And as Tracy just mentioned, we know that if there's opportunity for students to bring their own relevant passions in, you saw that several of them were using their own native languages, which Scratch supports. I think, over 77 or maybe 80 languages at this point in our online editor. We know from research that kids, when they are able to learn about something that they feel personally connected to, as Tracy said, they work harder and longer, and they persist in the face of challenge. So we really encourage you to think about that today as you bring this lesson back to your students.
So kids were working on a geology and rocks project.
So for today, when we think about what types of concerns or global issues or relevant community issues that you might want to share with your learners, we both, of course, chose problems related to water as a natural resource. This is just one of the UN 17 Global Sustainability Goals. So we'd love for you to check these out, and Marin's put the link in the chat. And we'd love to invite you to choose an issue for this session that's really specific to you and your community. So right now, just start thinking about, maybe it's one of these UN global goals. Maybe it's something that's really, really local and unique to your specific community or region. What's something that's really close to your heart that you feel like you would be interested in exploring and ideating solutions on? So for us, again, in terms of thinking about water as a natural resource, Tracy and I both shared how the local rivers in each of our communities have serious issues in terms of pollution, in terms of access to community members, in terms of really serious scientific challenges like algae blooms, which can have a devastating effect on the wildlife, those fish that you are wondering about in the river, or the things lurking beneath the water. And then similarly, Tracy in London spoke about issues of pollution, questions about sewage, and similarly bacteria in the Thames River in London. We also want to spend a minute just to acknowledge that you all might have a design process that makes more sense for you and your learners, depending on what your learning objectives are, depending on what standards you're trying to meet. Scratch uses the creative thinking spiral, as Tracy shared, but you might consider using the design thinking process, the engineering design process. In the US, we have the 5E model of inquiry that's specific to scientific inquiry, or any other number of different processes that might be more localized to your community or educational standards. And I also want to note that all the links that we're sharing, they are in the slides. Each of these pictures that we're showing and different contexts, they all are linked in the slide deck. So please do check out the slide deck that I believe Marin has shared in the chat if you want more information about each of these. So we also want to share that Marin, our learning designer, has also designed an amazing Scratch design journal. So somewhat similar to the other resources that we shared in terms of the coding cards, the Scratch design journal really is focused on helping students scaffold their the process of creating a project in Scratch. So it begins with students imagining and planning what their project might be, thinking about the specific elements of a Scratch project, like the sprites or characters, the backdrops, and then reflecting through the process of creating the Scratch project. So there's going to be prompts that have to do with reflecting on debugging, getting stuck, getting unstuck, and challenges and ideas that came up for them during their creation process. So we also encourage you to download this design journal and feel free to use it with your students as well, or even adapt it for your students.
Great. Thank you, Jacy, for sharing all the context and other tools and resources. So now we can officially dive into the creative learning spiral, which starts with imagine. So we're going to go through the whole process, identifying a problem to making a solution through the creative learning spiral. So for imagine, first of all, like Jacy has already mentioned briefly before, so the first step in the process of creating a solution for a problem is, of course, to identify a problem. So again, we are sharing the global goals for sustainable development from the United Nations as a source of inspiration. And if you go to their website and click on any one of these 17 sustainable development goals, there are actually even more specific subtopics or issues in each of the goals. So you can take a minute to browse it through if you want to use that as your source of inspiration. And again, also feel free to choose a problem issue that is relevant to your specific community. So choose a problem or issue that you want to brainstorm a solution for, and share it in the chat. What is the problem that you want to solve for today's session, at least? So be specific as possible. So we'll give you a minute to brainstorm, look at the UN goals, and share in the chat. What is the problem?
And don't worry if it's just a high level idea right now of what the problem is you want to solve. And we should also say we absolutely encourage you to think about water as a natural resource if you want to just tag along with Tracy and I as we design together today. So Mariana shared the issue of poverty and trying to eliminate poverty.
Yep.
So I wonder what you can find, Mariana, in the global goals that we shared. Or maybe there's something specific, question that's specific to your local community that you want to explore for today.
And then we have access to education. Yep. I believe that's also one of the goals in the UN goals as well. So you can definitely do your research on that as well. And then we have protect and restore water-related ecosystems. That's awesome, kind of related to what Jacy and I are going to demo today. And then we have everyone is able to choose to buy and eat whole foods. So that's access, affordability, the privilege of time. That's amazing. That's awesome. I love how specific that you get, and you have the different aspects of the issue as well. So we have clean water, sanitation, homelessness, gender equality, life below water, affordable, sustainable transportation, reduce inequalities, good health and well-being. That's great. Yeah, so we have a wide range, diverse range of issues that people want to, tackle and brainstorm a solution to. So that's great. So now that you have an initial idea, we can go to step 2 in the imagine process. So you cannot, we have a lot of great ideas in our mind, but we also need to be grounded in reality, like knowing the facts, what's the current situation as well. So we definitely need to research the problem after we have identified it to better understand it and how we might potentially tackle it. So again, we have some websites, links in the deck that you can go to for some platforms that are student-facing, so student-friendly. So you can use the UN World's Largest Lesson to learn more and research the problem. So they refer back to the Sustainable Development Goals. And then we have Kiddo Safe Search. So it's a kind of safe search engine for kids. And then we have some podcasts and some other websites. So you can, of course, use your own sources as well. So if you know of any good kind of platforms, websites for researching these kind of issues, problems, feel free to share them in the chat as well. So now we can, again, maybe take a minute or so for you to research your problem just a little bit. Yeah, to emphasize again, in real life, when you adapt it for your learners, you definitely want to give more time for the whole process. But for today's purpose, it's going to be like a quick demo. So.
And I just wanted to add, in terms of research, we don't want to underestimate the power of researching through your specific community itself, your community members, your community helpers, your local scientists, the universities, older students, family members. So the last link on this slide is a link that provides an example of interviewing a community member. And we also, we hope you've done this before, and maybe you have, but even with students as young as 5 years old, they can interview their family members or find a community helper to interview and find out more information. So we just want to emphasize that it doesn't necessarily have to be scientific research that's done, especially when it's a community problem.
Yep. So definitely don't underestimate the power of like just talking to people. So like there are different means. There's reading about it. There's talking to actual people about it. Maybe there's like some self experience that you can reflect on and use as a data point as well for the issue. So after you have researched the problem, now we can kind of flip things around a little bit. So actually imagine a world where the problem is solved. So what would it look like? What would it feel like? What would it sound like? So that could serve as like a basis on, later brainstorming about how you can achieve that. But for now, let's imagine like in this perfect ideal world where the problem is solved. What would it be like? So you can draw the world that you're imagining out on a piece of paper. You can write it down and share it in the chat, of course. You can even record a voice memo if you prefer to record your thoughts. So we can take, again, maybe 1 or 2 minutes for you to either draw or write down or, record a voice memo. If you decide to write it down, your imagination, feel free to share it in the chat as well.
Yeah, it could even be a statement, as Tracy was saying, like, I imagine ... I imagine in this world where the problem is solved ... this would happen. Or it might look like this, or it might sound like this.
Yeah. Oh, and also this image, this imagination is created by Jacy, where she imagines the Charles River issues, pollution issues are solved. Natalia shared that I would hear children laughing. That's a great one. We would, if we reduce pollution, we have a better air quality. Yeah, so even not just feel and sound like, what would it smell like? Maybe like there's no more smell of like pollutants and stuff like that. Imagine a world with food security. Yep. So absolutely. And you can think about like a world with food security. What would it look like for like a child in a family? So does that mean that like for every meal, food would be available on the table, warm food, and so on? So we can also be very specific, or even just using one small angle to imagine this ideal world. And then Whole Foods, a home for those that are homeless. Yep. And then children are happy and safe. Community handling waste in a way not to attract pests and not be spread by weather. Yep. So probably like a community with no pests and then ecosystem that is thriving, creating moments in time.
These are so lovely. It actually reminds me, Tracy, of a very ubiquitous English language arts lesson that they have here in the United States, which is the small moment writing assignment. So choosing a small moment, just one little idea, but then creating a story around it, like illustrating that moment. And so I feel like these are small moments that are bursting out in your imagination. It's really lovely to see these small phrases. And I wonder if any of you are drawing them as well.
Yeah. If any of you are drawing, maybe you can also include the drawing in a Scratch project later on so that we can see it. Yep, so we have more, a little more. Kids have time, are encouraged to dream out loud with less pressure from exams and society. Yep, absolutely. Conservation of coastal marine areas. And then minimizing impacts from hurricanes and other storms on coastal communities. That's awesome. So we have now some idea of a problem. You have learned a little bit more about it, and you have imagined what the perfect world without the solution would look like. So you have many ideas. So let's bring them to life. And I'm going to hand it to Jacy for the create part.
Super. All right. So we wanted to note that when thinking about the final project, the presentation that your learners might be preparing to share their solutions for the problem they chose, it's important for us to note that Scratch could just be one of those. So there could be, and even within the Scratch, there could be really vastly different outcomes in terms of the types of projects that they create and share. So here in these examples, we're sharing a water filtration drawing that was done by Tracy. So their project might be more of a scientific simulation that they create. In the middle, there's the Petition for Awareness Scratch project. So this is more like a public service announcement type messaging that they bring to life in Scratch. And then the last example is the kind of more holistic scientific model that one of the a learner shared, which is a sewage management system for an entire community. And we just wanted to align it with the principles of universal design for learning and just emphasize how important it is for us as learning designers at Scratch to make sure that there's always multiple means of representation and expression in as many activities as we design. So the next step of the process in terms of create would be prototyping. So in these couple examples, we also provide a couple different types of expression. So your learners could use art materials, hands-on materials, unplugged to design their prototype and their ideas. They could use something digital, another digital platform such as Tinkercad, where you can create a 3D model of your idea or your prototype. And both of these are free. Of course, you need internet access and a device for Tinkercad. But these are again, ways that you can let students kind of follow their interests. They might be a more hands-on learner. They might gravitate more towards the computer and give them that option there. And I see Maren just shared in the chat some context for universal design for learning from our friends at CAST. So I will say we did want to give you just a couple minutes again, and we are really condensing the process down. But if you wanted to grab some materials around you, as you can see in the one picture, I used some yarn, some felt, a paper towel tube, and this little storage bin. And I created from those materials my model of a public art water filtration system for the Charles River. So my idea is that it would be both a public art piece and a functional scientific filtration system that would continuously clean and filter the water that's going through through it. So it will please the community and be functional. So you can either draw out your prototype again, grab those materials. And I will give a heads up that the unplugged art materials, if you're grabbing them now and putting them together, snap a picture of them. You will see this water fountain a little bit later in my Scratch project that we're going to share once we bring it into Scratch. So as we keep chatting, feel free to keep messing with those materials around you or drawing out your ideas. We're going to keep moving you forward though, because we want to make sure we hit everything in the session time. So we're going to show you how we can bring those ideas that we prototype in either unplugged or through other digital platforms, how we can bring them into Scratch to bring them to life. So we're going to open up Scratch now and show you a couple different projects that Tracy and I have developed. And let's see here. I want to make sure everyone knows how to get to Scratch. So if you've never been to Scratch before, we should note you can just type in scratch.mit.edu into your browser. Once you get there, you can click the Create button, and that will open up the Scratch editor. So if you have any questions as we jump into Scratch, we have an awesome team in the chat who can hopefully help get you unstuck anywhere that you need to get unstuck. But otherwise, we hope you can follow along. All right. So you can see that okay, Tracy?
Yes.
Super. So this is my Charles River fountain that is being brought to life in Scratch. And again, as I'm chatting, feel free to be bringing your idea into Scratch, whether it's a picture that you take of your drawing or your hands-on prototype, or you can design the whole thing in Scratch itself. So if we look at my prototype here, what I did is I brought in, of course, the background drawing that I created when I imagined a world that was free of river and water pollution. I brought in my water filtration fountain. I included my floating classroom and my swimming area in the back, but I've only done I've only created one animation so far. So I don't know if you can see it. It's a little bit hard, but when I click on these kids right there, they're dragging up a bucket in their floating classroom. I don't know what's in their bucket, really. I haven't fully imagined it, but I suppose I would imagine they're pulling up the water and doing a quick test. Maybe it's one of those little water tests that you can do to check for different minerals or pollutants that are chemicals that are in the water. So as Tracy and I share our project, we're just going to be tinkering along with you. So if you haven't already, it's your chance to open up Scratch and really just start tinkering along. I'll give you just a little bit of how I created that the extra layer in my drawing that I brought in. So I have the background that I brought in as in the stage area. So I uploaded it as my backdrop. I brought in my water filtration system as its own separate sprite, and I had to remove the background in Scratch. And if anyone needs a nice handy tip for how to do that, I'm sure Maren can plop it into the chat to share with you. I also brought in just these two little kids so I can click on them directly to trigger the bucket action. And the bucket animation is really, I just copied and pasted it so that when you click next costume, it looks like the bucket is being lifted out of the water.
Jacy, I think we have a question on how did you create the background?
That's a great question. So I actually, this background was actually drawn, Clement. I just drew it by hand. And I believe I colored it in using Scratch. So I just drew it with black ink, and then I did all the coloring in the Scratch paint editor. I will stop sharing. Tracy, are you able to share your project?
Yeah,
Awesome.
I can share mine. So there was like a drawing earlier on that's like a filtration system. So that's kind of like my solution to the water pollution problem. So a pretty standard filtration system. So I wanted to recreate that in Scratch. So I'm going to share my screen. So hopefully you can see that. So like Jacy said, you can actually create the whole thing in Scratch as well. So that's what I did. So I did all the drawing in Scratch using the paint editor. So if you're not familiar with it, so this is the sprite, or the character area, basically where all the parts of my filtration system is. And if you want to create something in Scratch and draw it, so you can click on this little cat button and click the paint brush. So if you click on a paint brush, then you'll be able to see the costume area with the paint editor. So you can use all these shape, circle and purple and so on to create that. So I basically use all the shape tool to draw all these. So for instance, for the glass, so it's like not a rectangle, but a trapezium. So how you can do that is actually you can manipulate the shape as well. So when you want to select something, definitely click on this arrow. So if you click on it, and if you click on this one, so this is like adding or manipulating all these kind of circle points to further change the shape. So I can do this, and then I kind of have like a glass shape, and I can always fill it with different color and so on. So that's basically how I created all my filtration system drawing, and then just copy and pasted many of the circles to create like the rocks as my filter. So I'm going to delete that and go back to code. So basically, I can share what it does first. So that's my imagination, or like the project that I wanted, is that I wanted to create an interactive kind of simulation of what different filters would look like, would work for the polluted water. So I have filter 1 and I have filter 2 that has sand as well. So that's like a stronger filter. So when I click on filter 1, the water would pour, and then it will be, cleaner, not the cleanest. If I click on filter 2 with the sand as well, then, the water will be even more clean. So, changing the color. So that's basically the concept. And to also give you a little bit of behind the scene for the water, like the glass of water, just like what Jacy did, is actually in costume. So it's like a little animation, just 2 frame. So we call it 2 costumes. So basically 2 frame. And then for the filter, again, it's also 1 sprite, 1 character, but again, with like 2 different frames. So you can always right click, duplicate, so that I will have the same rocks again in the second frame, but then I just added the sand by using a rectangle. So that's what it looks like. Oh, and then for the water, again, 2 frames, as you might have guessed it. One is like the less clean one. This is like the most clean one. So all these correspond to filter 1 and filter 2, which is in my project. So one more thing that I want to show is you might wonder like how you can make it so that when I click on filter 1, it would trigger something. So in filter 1, we actually have like a section of code that is called event. So basically what the different triggers might be. So there's one that is called when the sprite is clicked. So I use that one. So that's why when filter 1 is clicked, then it would do this code. And then for filter 2, again, it's also when this sprite is clicked, then it will do something. So what I did here is that when filter 1 is clicked, so this kind of label, it will broadcast a message. So broadcast is also here. So basically, it's like a message that only the computer reads. And so it will send this message, the computer. Then you will decide, OK, then when someone else receives it, so for instance, when the glass of water receives the message, then it will switch the costume to I call it pour, which is this one, because the original is this. So when I hear the message one, then it will become, pouring. And then the water will also come out, which is also switching costume to, the clean or less clean one based on the scenario. So that's basically how the whole kind of trigger interaction works. It is clicking on a sprite, broadcast a message, which is here. And you can always add more message if you are making a complicated project. And then everything that should change based on that trigger would have this when I receive message, and then it will do whatever that it should do. And you can do the code according to what you want to achieve. So that's basically the whole trick of my simple project, which is using the broadcast message. So if you have any questions about, the broadcasting or drawing things in Scratch, feel free to put it in the chat as well. And we can always help you troubleshoot together. Do you have your designs available to view with the code? Yes. So the project is shared in the community. So you can check it out, and you can remix mine and use my designs. And yeah, we have more tutorials on this as well. And Lisa has a great metaphor analogy as well. Broadcast is like a director to announce change to a scene. Yeah. So you broadcast something, and then some of these other characters should do something. So that's basically my bet. Awesome. So actually, one more thing that I want to show, since Mariana asked design available to view with the code. Yep, and one more thing that I want to show, if you're logged in to a Scratch account online, so that's only available if you're logged in, you can actually go in other people's projects and then click on this backpack area and then drag and drop this kind of character to your backpack. So it can be from your own project, other people's projects, and when you create a new project, now in your backpack, you would have what you just saved. So you can actually put it here, and now you will have the sprite and the code that you can actually use. So you can use my design or other people's design if you want this way, using the backpack, just the elements of it. And of course, you should give credit in the notes and credit section if you're using other people's designs or code and so on.
Amazing. Thanks, Tracy.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing.
And I did want to note too, so the coding cards that we shared earlier, they're definitely in the chat. I just wanted to note how they do have specific code ideas to try for your learners. So not only does it take them through the entire activity that we shared today, starting with identifying the problem and brain researching and prototyping, but then it also helps guide them a bit in Scratch in terms of how you could the different ideas they can do to code their sprite, the broadcast, and the really basic next costume animation that Tracy and I both shared. It can be really powerful. It also shows a few different examples of projects and has some reflection questions as well. So I wanted to make sure those are shared with you. All right. So I'm imagining in my brain that many of you are creating your projects in Scratch and tinkering. Maybe you've remixed one of Tracy's, the project that Tracy shared. So we hope that you'll keep creating along as we share some of the other ideas. And then I did note in the chat, the session runs, it's kind of secret, the session runs until 12:15. So we have lots of resources to share with you in the next 15 minutes that you can take right back to your classroom. So we also have a studio that you can share the projects you're working on. Definitely works in progress. We know you've basically had about 20 minutes to work on the Scratch project. So we'd love for you to share them in our studio, and we'll be able to take a look at some of your examples and share them with others in the call. So in the meantime, we just wanted to share, again, a couple different examples of more formative type assessments that you can cultivate with your students. So whether they've created a Scratch project to share their knowledge and to demonstrate what they've learned, maybe that's in addition to a hands-on project. So in this example, you'll see an example of students that actually used Tinkercad to design 3D printed water filtration discs. And then they were testing how their discs work in the context of a more like different types of filtration materials such as sand and rocks and coffee filters. So this is just a quick peek at that hands-on action.
I'm pour next. Okay, let's see what comes out. Oh, it's going to move sides. You can get a little more. I think it's a little more because the napkin's dry.
So they're wondering if it's going to come through.
That's enough. That's enough. Oh, the napkins. It's clean. It's clean. Well, kind of.
Really clean.
Yo, we did it. Yo, we made clean water.
We have some excited chatter.
Nothing came
And they discover that their filters work.
It will. It will.
I'm jumping in next. I call it. I call third.
All right. No.
And it's a little hard to see, but the 3D printed filter is right here. It's the green disc. And they, the students were able to choose how thick or thin the actual weave of the 3D printer disc was. And then all the different groups had different designs so that they could compare and contrast their final product. And then we also wanted to share that while there might be an opportunity for a young person to create a public service announcement in Scratch, there's also obviously an opportunity for them to create a video as well. So again, along the principles of UDL and multiple means of expression, this is a young person that used a super basic green screen to design their own public service announcement about climate change.
Stronger. The greenhouse effect is making the earth warmer so gases trap the heat so it makes the air warmer so that makes the ice melt. I'm now starting to freeze, and this is what is happening to all types of penguins, and now they have barely any ice to live on. Now here are some ways to not have as much carbon dioxide in the air. One way is you can stop using your own vehicle and start using public transportation, or you could just walk. Another way is when you're using electricity, don't use as much. The last way is when you have the lights on, remember to turn them off.
So we just wanted to share an example of another way that young people can communicate their ideas and share their very scientific knowledge as well. And again, just make the alignment with Scratch that if a project like that is done in Scratch, there's ample opportunity for them to bring in their oral fluency when they record their voice, as well as, trigger different actions on the screen and make the projects as interactive as they want.
Stronger. The greenhouse effect.
All right. So Tracy's going to share a little bit of the studio so that we can see some of your ideas that you've been working on.
Yeah, so I believe Maren already shared the link in the chat for the studio for this workshop. So you need to have a Scratch account in order to be able to share your projects. So if you don't have one, you can register one for free. So if you're logged in your Scratch account, you should be able to see like this orange share button in the project page. Then you can click on it to share this project with this peers group. And it's totally fine if it's work in progress. And you can always unshare the project after this workshop is over. But for now, we would really love to see what kind of thing you have created, at least you have begun to create in the limited time. So this is the studio. If you can put your project link in the chat, then we can add to the studio as well. And now Jacy also has made the studio open to anyone to add projects. So you can go to the studio link directly and then put your project URL in that, and then click add by URL. Then you would be able to share your project in the studio.
Kirsten, I hope you don't mind. I popped yours into our studio. But we'll give you a couple minutes to put your works up in progress there. And it's also just a nice way it's a nice holding zone for you to go in and remix the projects that Tracy and I shared, and then remix any of the projects that other participants share as well. So we can check back in the studio soon. I see Tracy's project is in there now too. Amazing. We shall come back to the studio in just a couple minutes.
Yep. So the next phase in the creative learning spiral is to share, which you kind of did a little bit by sharing your projects in a community. But there's we can definitely go deeper in sharing. So we are also wondering, what does sharing look like in your classroom? And how do you design for opportunity for sharing throughout your design process? So feel free to share your ideas in the chat. So some examples that we have seen might be gallery walks in a classroom, online studio like in Scratch, poster session, family nights that involve community members and family as well. So yeah, so I see that I use Scratch. So basically, probably you're using Scratch for your learners to share, so which is great.
I'm also curious if anyone uses the Scratch app, so the offline app. I think some of the ideas that we're going to share in a minute are really nice examples of how you can maintain the community of peers and sharing, even if you're not using the online version of Scratch that has studios.
Yeah. So we can share these resources with you, like what Jacy just mentioned. So the first one is a class studio. So that's like the online Scratch community. So if you're not familiar with it, how did Jacy create a studio for this workshop? So we have this guide, all linked in the slide deck again, on how you can create a studio for learners to share. And then we have a gallery walk handout resource for you as well. So this would work totally fine, perfectly, even if it's offline in the classroom together. So basically, it's like a reflection sheet that learners can use and walk around the room and look at each other's projects and then fill in the sheet with their reflections. And then we, again, of course, have the design journal. So this is such a great resource. So after the learner has used it, filled it in when they design the Scratch project, they can actually also share the design journal with the peers so that everyone can get a behind the scene on how the thought process, what the thought process was, and so on. So, and then kind of in the last step or phase of the of the creative learning spiral, which is reflect. So before that, let me see Kirsten's comment as well. So for Scratch Junior, Kirsten collects all the student projects, make a class film that teacher shows in class and send home to their parents. That's amazing. That is like so special. And I love that you're also engaging the parents and showing their children's work as well. All right, so now let's step back and reflect just a little bit and put and in the chat, put on your learner's hat. So in the process today, like in your creation, like even though it's work in progress, where did you get stuck and how did you get unstuck? And then also, is there anything that you would change about the solution that you have brainstormed? And what have you learned about the problem? So if you even just have, one sentence or just a few words of reflection so far today in the workshop that you can share in the chat, that would be great. So did you get stuck when you were using Scratch? How did you get unstuck? And then also, if you have more time, or now that you have seen other people's projects with more ideas, is there anything that you would change about your solution? Anything that you have learned about the problem? The more they talk about it, the more they remember. Yep. How long? So we have a question. How long would you allow for the design process up to the prototype?
Awesome. I was actually just trying to type that all out and realize it would be so much easier just to share. So Brianni, I was saying that the entire process, if you did the whole thing, I'd say could take between 3 to 6 blocks, teaching blocks. So that depends on your time, of course. So the ideating and researching a problem could certainly be one time block, one lesson. Prototyping your solutions could be another. And then at least I'd say for that age group, at least 2 to 3 sessions where they're able to bring their ideas to life in Scratch. So I hope that makes sense. I mean, six blocks of time, I think would be ideal. And here in the US, I'm not sure where you are. That could be anywhere between 40 minutes to an hour, a little over an hour for each of those blocks. I hope that helps.
Yep. So I think we should start to wrap up. Yeah.
Amazing. So I'm probably going to fly through these a little bit so that we have time for any questions that you might have. But again, you are going to have access to the slides. So we'll let you go dig just a little bit deeper. In the last phase of the creative learning spiral, we actually invite you as educators to imagine take 2, which means we'd love for you to consider how you might adapt this activity for your specific learners. And so we're sharing one of our last pieces of the Scratch creative learning philosophy, which are our guiding principles. And the guiding principles are really founded on the ideas of low floors, wide walls, and then high ceilings. And so from these guiding principles, we want to emphasize that low floors, and here they're augmented with some extra ideas to help scaffold the idea of learner variability. So you might have learners that need a little extra scaffolding. So we invite you to design your activity with low floors with ramps so that anyone can access them. So that might be providing many different pathways for young people to enter the project. Again, we're offering them they might read to research, they might interview a peer or a family member, they might listen to a podcast or watch a video. So we just want you to be mindful of the many different ways many different entry points for learners as they enter the activity. And then wide walls, as Tracy's alluded to multiple times, we really emphasize the idea of making sure that the activity is designed so that young people can bring their passions and most relevant interests into the creation. So making it as relevant and real world as possible is going to make it more meaningful, and those learners will persist even harder in the faces of challenge. And then lastly, the idea of high ceilings. In this case, providing those tall ladders. So you can think of a ladder kind of like a scaffolding. Those coding cards might be really helpful for those students who want to go further, but might need some additional, guides. Marin put our YouTube tutorials in the chat as well. Those high ceilings that you can get to, you might want to share those YouTube videos with young people who might want to go a little bit deeper into the projects that they make. All right. So we've been asking you to ideate and think about how you might adapt it to your classroom. So we're going to let you percolate on that now. If you have ideas for that, we'd love to hear them in the chat. And we're going to continue on as you share those ideas in the chat. We want to leave you with lots of resources to take right back to your classrooms. So all of the resources that were shared today are all located on this one slide, so you can easily find all the links. We are sharing an extension. So when we talk about high ceilings, we always want to make sure we leave you with a little bit more for those of you who are ready to conquer even more beyond what Tracy and I shared with you today. So our friends from Take Action Global shared a variety of resources, learning resources and real world like challenges that have to do with climate action. So we hope that you will explore these and possibly engage in these with your learners.